We need to talk about 30-day stretching challenges because there's a glaring problem with these challenges that crop up every January. And that problem's quite obvious. What happens on day 31 of the challenge? For a huge population, including everyone that I've ever known in real life who's ever done one of these challenges for either stretching or some other activity, there have been only two outcomes on day 31. Outcome one is that the person pats themselves on the back for completing the challenge and then never picks up that activity ever again. Outcome two is that they continue sort of intermittently, but on a slightly downward trajectory, and then 2 or 3 months later, they've dropped the habit entirely. And so at the end of 1 year, there's no lingering evidence whatsoever that any stretching had been done. There's no lasting benefit. Of course, there are exceptions to this, and if that's you, I'm not here to tell you that it didn't work or that you shouldn't keep doing it. That's awesome. I'm happy for you. I'm here to help that population who clicked on this video because 30-day challenges have let them down in the past, so I'm here to present an alternative that has really changed my life and that I hope will help change yours. So I think I can identify the population for whom a 30-day challenge is not well suited quite simply, and that would be anyone who doesn't want to practice every single day for the long term. So if you think at the end of 1 year, do you want to have 365 days logged? At the end of 10 years, do you want to have 3,000 days logged? If your honest answer to that is no, and you don't see yourself completing this new stretching habit every single day for the foreseeable future, then a 30-day challenge is probably not for you. A big reason for that is that the 30-day challenge is unsustainable by design, because the end goal after the challenge is completed doesn't match the work you actually did during the challenge itself. And if you answer no to that previous question, then the end goal habit you want to have is actually easier than the thing you're trying to do during the challenge. So what do you do on day 31? Do you reduce the habit from every single day to just a few times a week, something more sustainable for you the long term? If so, you're actually just building a new habit. Sure, you'll have gained some flexibility and some knowledge about how to stretch, which is good, but those aren't the hard part of sustaining a habit. The hard part is growing to love the habit and making it an effortless part of your life. And that has very little to do with your actual technical skill in the activity. And if you start trying to build a habit using a different habit that's harder than the habit that you actually want to develop, well, it's going to be harder than just developing that habit in the first place. And this reveals a very common misconception about habits. Habits do not need to be performed every single day. I mean, actually think about your own life for a second. Personally, the only things I do every day are eat, sleep, and take a big old dump. I have tons of hobbies and things that I would call habits. I work, I run, I lift, I play volleyball, I wing foil, I go spearfishing, I play guitar, I hang out with friends, I go on walks, I listen to metal albums. But not one of those do I do every single day because they're wants, they're not needs. I don't need to do them every day. And in fact, if I do any one of them too much or too often, I start to get a little bit sick of it. I need to take a break. So if I binge these activities too much, I actually end up doing them with less consistency than if I don't force myself to do them too often. And despite not repeating the exact same thing day after day, every single day without a break, I'm able to maintain these habits pretty effortlessly for the long term. And so why would flexibility be any different? It isn't. Habits are about consistency and repetition over time. But there's no reason that the cycle of repetition, the frequency of repetition, has to be 24 hours, right? No one said that. And in fact, for many things, it doesn't make much sense to try to do them every day, especially for physical training like stretching, lifting weights, or doing cardio. We're literally trying to stress our body and force it to adapt. And those very adaptations that we're trying to elicit oftentimes take more than 24 hours to happen. It makes sense not to be stoked to stretch the next day after you stretched if you're not recovered from that stretching. It makes sense to not be stoked to lift weights if you're not recovered from lifting weights previously. And yes, of course, it's possible to program your stretching or lifting such that you are resting relevant body parts day after day and you're not hitting exactly the same exercises every single day. Of course, that's possible to do. But again, if you don't see yourself long term wanting to commit that much time to it, then it doesn't make sense to try in the short term. So how can we learn from this problem and what can we do instead? I would present to you the following antidote. Instead of asking, how can I make the most short-term progress in flexibility? One answer to which is obviously to practice every day very, very frequently because doing more work will give you more results in the short term. Instead of asking that question, I would instead ask myself, how can I make long-term, life-changing progress in flexibility inevitable? And one possible answer to that is the anti-challenge. Instead of trying to challenge ourselves to complete something which is more difficult than it needs to be, we simply establish the most simple, easy to complete stretching routine that we can imagine. It's got to be something that we can start today that gives more to our lives than it takes from it, and it has to be easy enough to complete on a weekly basis until we have no flexibility limitations. So this will look a little bit different for every individual, but instead of a 30-day challenge, instead I think we should be looking to establish a 100 session habit. If you do 100 stretching sessions in the next calendar year, that's roughly 2 a week, I guarantee your flexibility will be transformed. You want to start very small and rest as needed, but just always come back to it. Utilize effective techniques for habit formation like habit stacking, where you stretch every single time that you do some other activity that's already a habit of yours. That makes it a lot easier. And if you pay attention to the process, take the time to actually try and enjoy it, and iterate your practice over time so that it's always adapted to you, your life, your schedule, and your current level, there's just no way you won't get flexible. You'll be setting yourself up so that it's hard to fail, not so that it's hard to succeed. You want it to be a challenge to fail, not a challenge to succeed. If you need more help on this, watch this video on high intensity stretching, which is what you've been watching in the background and how I personally do this. And if you want to learn this in the easiest step-by-step way possible, grab your stretching starter pack today for free at the link in the description. Thanks so much for watching. Drop your questions below and I'll try to get back to you in a future one. Take care. Let's get strong and flexible for life. Bye-bye.